Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is a Heel Heat Top 10. The topic of today's Top 10 is a little bit off our normal subject. Today is May the 4th, which, for all you Star Wars fans out there, is Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you, get it? So, in honor of that, we're going to step away from our normal wrestling-related top 10s and do a top 10 Star Wars characters. We'll start it off with number 10, Emperor Palpatine. The guy who kind of, once you go back through the sequels, you see orchestrates the whole Clone Wars. He turns Darth Vader to the dark side. He's the overwhelmingly evil force going through the whole series, and obviously a genius at what he did to turn everybody. Also probably one of the very few actual named bad guys. If you think of the movies, most of the bad guys are either clones or stormtroopers, which are just nameless grunts, to be honest with you. Next up, our number 9 guy, a man that Palpatine actually killed, Mace Windu. One of the few highlights of the prequel series was Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mace Windu. I thoroughly enjoyed him. I thought he was out of the new characters that were brought in, I thought he was the best of the new characters. He had the Jedi vibe down. He had what it meant to be a Jedi, how to keep calm, how to keep cool, use your head, be smart. Plus he also had a pretty cool purple lightsaber, which anybody that has that's cool in my book. Next up, our number 8 character, Jabba the Hutt. Who doesn't love Jabba the Hutt? Basically an oversized slug whose main claim to fame is kidnapping Princess Leia and making her wear that metal bikini that everybody loves. Can't go wrong with that. Also his severe hatred for Han Solo, which he sends out throughout the original trilogy. There's people trying to find Han Solo and bring him back for the reward to Jabba the Hutt. An interesting character and definitely a guy that I thoroughly enjoyed through it. I thought the character they did with him was kind of cool, kind of neat. The puppetry that they used making him in the original trilogy was off the charts. Definitely something that added to the movies, in my opinion. Added a little subplot, which the whole movie wasn't Luke versus Vader. It was, you had these little subplots in there too, which made it a more enjoyable series, in my opinion. Next up, number 7. A character played by 2 different guys, Sir Alec Guinness and also Ewan McGregor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. The Alec Guinness one is my preference of the 2. I enjoyed the Ewan McGregor version. I think it didn't quite hold the... He didn't quite have the poise that Sir Alec Guinness did, but still you could see that in him. And he did look like a young Alec Guinness. He was one of my favorite characters in the Clone Wars cartoon series. The way that they portrayed Obi-Wan Kenobi in that I thought was the best portrayal of him to expand upon what was already given in the original trilogy. Obi-Wan kind of as a mentor slash friend to Anakin Skywalker, kind of gives you the backstory of why this is such an interesting dichotomy with the good guys, the bad guys, the families involved, and every part of it. Thoroughly enjoyed the guy. Probably, I just wish in the original trilogy, other than the little flashback hologrammy things, he would have been a little bit more involved, but I understand his death in A New Hope is such a striking visual that it added so much to that movie that here you have this this crutch to fall back on if you're Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but now he's gone, so it's up to you, kid. Which, as we see, he took care of the job. Next up, our number 6 character, probably the biggest cult hero in all of the Star Wars series, Boba Fett. Now, in the originals, he wasn't in the movies that much. He just had a couple appearances. He's the guy that eventually takes Han Solo to Jabba. He's a bounty hunter for hire. And it was such a striking character visually that everybody clamored for more of Boba Fett and more of what he was doing. The Star Wars Christmas special had an expanded version of him. And then eventually we get to the prequels and we learn that Boba Fett is who they cloned to make the clone troopers, which eventually become the stormtroopers. And it's just interesting how they did that, even to the point where you see, or not Boba Fett, but Jango Fett, Boba Fett's father is who they cloned. Sorry about that, folks. I had to repair that before I got 1,000 comments saying it was Jango, not Boba. But anyway, Boba was a clone of Jango. However, unlike the other clone troopers, where they added and subtracted what they didn't like to his DNA, they kept Boba Fett as a straight-on clone. And you can see when Mace Windu kills Jango, Boba sees it, and you can see where he would turn to the dark side in a way. But all the way, an interesting character all the way through, which leads us to our next character, Lando Calrissian, played ever so famously by Billy D. Williams. Kind of a scoundrel. We know him most as Han Solo's friend. He sells out the group, the Rebel Alliance, basically to save his city, Cloud City. But then at the end, he redeems himself by helping them escape and helping them overtake the Empire at the end of Return of the Jedi, bringing him back into the fold as a hero. He's kind of a more of an everyday hero, somewhere where he was pushed to the point where he had to act. He didn't want to act, he didn't want to become part of it, but his hand was pushed. Darth Vader in one of the famous scenes from Empire Strikes Back, he's talking with Lando, and Lando says this wasn't part of the deal. And Darth Vader says to him, I have altered the original deal, pray I don't alter it further. Which shows you where his frustration starts with the deal they made, and how going forward it's going to change everything he does. Because at that point he was just a normal diplomat. Now, coming off of that, speaking of Han Solo, our number 4 character, Han Solo. Everybody loved Han. I love Han. He was the coolest character of the group. He was the guy that everybody wanted to be, all the women wanted to be with. He had the best line in the history of all films ever, when Princess Leia looks at Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back and says, I love you, and Han stands there, stone-faced like a pimp, and says, I know. Coolest line ever. One of the worst lines I've ever had to use in my personal life. I did it a few times, folks. I'm sorry to say it didn't go over so well as it does in the movie to real life people, but it is what it is. Han Solo, definitely the scruffy looking nerf herder, the guy, again, much like I said with Lando, initially he was just a space pirate that they kind of coerced into being one of the group and being part of the Rebel Alliance, which was pretty cool. Leads him on to become one of the big heroes in the story. Now, our number 3 character is Han Solo's best friend, Chewbacca the Wookiee. Chewbacca, what can you say about the guy? if you don't smile when you're looking at Chewbacca, there is something inherently wrong with you. Basically, he's a giant dog that just, with immense strength, immense lovability. I mean, the guy, for a guy that has no words that we understand, he's such an iconic character, such a great character. The mannerisms, the movements, the way that Peter Mayhew walked around in that costume made that character something special that everybody just fell in love with instantly and still loves to this day. Next up, our number 2 character, Yoda. Yoda is brought to us and explained to us as one of the strongest Jedis that's ever lived. When we find him, he's a tiny little elfin-looking creature with green skin and Vulcan-like ears, and over 900 years old, kind of walking around like he's crippled with a cane. But we learn quite quickly that Yoda is the Jedi Master, that he has more insight and more knowledge than probably any Jedi that's came before him or went since. He teaches young Luke the ways of the Force, as he had taught millions of other children before, including Luke's father. And Yoda, they expand upon his character in the prequels, which I thought was really cool, him being the leader of the Jedi Council, showing him training the children in some of the ways that we see Luke gets trained later on, canonically wise. The coolest thing, when we finally got to see Yoda fight, and I believe it's Attack of the Clones if I'm not mistaken, where we see him get to fight Count Dooku, and it's just a wonder of flips and jumps and movement and force pushes, and probably one of the coolest scenes of that movie in my opinion. One of the movies that people look down upon, the prequels not being as up to par as the original trilogy. However, really cool scene and a really cool character. A guy I thoroughly enjoyed, and as you can see, he's my number 2 character because he's a guy that I thoroughly loved, and I loved Frank Oz's voice characterizations. I love the puppetry behind it in the originals, the CGI in the newer ones. And even when we go into, like I said before, with the Clone Wars and the expanded universe stuff, Yoda still stays true to his character and who he is as being basically the general of it all. Now, before we get into our number 1, if you've seen our show before, you know that we do a best of the rest. Basically, these are the people that just barely missed the list, not in no specific order. First up, Darth Maul. Darth Maul had a cool look, a cool character to him, double-sided lightsaber. Probably would have made this list if he was in more than one movie. And the Clone Wars. I think the Clone Wars kind of hurt his mystique a bit, the way that they portrayed him in that. But it is what it is. Like I said, if he would have been the main antagonist for the original trilogy, he'd probably move up severely, because there was something really cool about the way that Ray Park characterized him in that first movie. Next up for our best of the rest, our favorite droid, R2-D2. Why I chose R2 over C-3PO? C-3PO had a little bit of that annoying factor to him. Where R2-D2, much like Chewbacca, is a character we don't understand, but he's a pivotal plot character in all 6 of the movies that he's appeared in. Him and C-3PO being the only 2 people that appear in all 6 movies. Well, technically Luke or Anakin Skywalker does as well, but as being played by the same characters are the only 2 that appear in all 6 movies. But, pretty cool character all around. Iconic figure, something that you say R2-D2 now, everybody knows who you're talking about. Next up, Princess Leia. Eh, the only reason that Leia didn't make this list, in my opinion, is that I just think they could have done more with her a bit. And with the upcoming next 3 movies, I understand she's going to be more of a factor. So that'll be cool to see. Obviously, one of my favorite things from the Star Wars universe is Princess Leia and the metal bikini. Every man loves it of my generation, and probably some younger generations and older generations as well. Carrie Fisher did an excellent job as Princess Leia. I just think there's the first movie, she's too much of a damsel in distress. When we finally get around to seeing her kick ass, it's too little, in my opinion, of her kicking ass, where she should be kick ass from the beginning. Last but not least, for our best of the rest, Luke Skywalker, the primary hero in our original trilogy. The only reason he doesn't make the top 10 for me is he's a little too cookie cutter, a little too bland. Just my opinion, folks. This is my top 10. If you want to make one, you can go ahead. Now, saying that, if you think I ranked somebody up too high, put somebody down too low, left somebody off the list altogether, let us know what you think. Hit us up on our Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put the comments down where? Down in the comment box. And last but not least, drum roll please. No drum roll. The number 1 character in Star Wars, Darth Vader. I mean, how could you not see that coming, folks? He wasn't nowhere in the top 10 or the best of the rest. To me, he was the coolest thing ever when I was a child. You had Darth Vader, his first scene where he comes through the smoke in A New Hope. You've got his music playing. He commands them to search through the spaceship to find Princess Leia. We see him, as we go on, we see that he's a master Jedi or who has been turned Sith. We find out through the prequels the events that led up to it, with his mother dying and seemingly his wife turning against him, which is why the Jedi Order probably doesn't want you to fall in love with people, because your emotions can draw you down the path of the dark side. His character does a full 180 by the end of episode 6. He's helping his son destroy the evil empire, destroy the Emperor. To me, there is no more iconic character, no cooler character in the history of cinema than Darth Vader in the black costume, the breathing impediment, the impeccable lightsaber skills. Everything about him. James Earl Jones' voice, David Prowse's movements, the original portrayals of Anakin. The Jake Long was, and the brooding Anakin was, but still, it's the backstory that leads us to the most compelling character in all of the Star Wars universe. The guy that everybody loves, probably one of the great villains in all of cinema, Darth Vader. But basically, that's all I have to say about this one. May the 4th be with you. And this has been a Heel Heat Top 10.